Yo, 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 it's Tata time. Yeah. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about equations. Alright, this is a huge deal in math world. If you go home and you ask your parents or guardians or your grandparents or even your older siblings about equations, they can tell you it's a big part of math. So equations are something you guys are going to see year after year after year, and I'm so excited that I get to help you start that foundation of equations. That way we can keep building on it and keep building on it, because I know that you guys can rock this. Alright, so let's first talk about what is an equation. So an equation is a math statement where we say that two things are equal to each other. And so equations, what they're going to look like is something like x plus 4 equals 2. Alright, so we're trying to figure out what do we add to 4 to be 2. Alright, so we'll get to that in a little bit, but we have steps to solve these equations. So step number 1 is we got to get the variable alone. So think about it like a mystery. Alright, so we're trying to solve this case. So we got to get the victim or the x alone. Alright, so we put a box around it. Step 2 is we identify the clues. Alright. That is just the operations. Are we adding? Are we subtracting? Are we multiplying? Or are we dividing? And then we undo the clues in step 3, which means we do the opposite. So much like this right here, we change what's being done. So the opposite of addition is subtraction, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So they undo each other. So if we're adding something, we undo it by subtracting. And if we're like dividing something, we undo that by multiplying that same thing. And then step 4 is we make our case. That just means we check it. Whatever we got, we're going to plug back in and check it. And I cannot say how big this step is. I know a lot of you are like me. You're just ready to go, but you've got to check your answer. I cannot tell you how big that is. So let's look at our first example here. Let's dive into these things. Let's make some cases. Let's go detectives. So x plus 15 equals 24. Step 1, let's isolate that variable. Let's get it alone. So I'm going to put a box around my x. This is going to allow me to do step 2, which is to identify the clues. So what operation is being done? I want you to actually write it down. I'm adding 15. By writing it down, you identify to yourself, this is what we know. This is what's being done. I cannot tell you enough. Quit trying to rush and write down what you know. They've given you enough here to solve this. And then step 3 is we undo the clues. We do the opposite. So since we're adding 15, the opposite of that would be to subtract 15. And I'm going to write that down. And so then I'm actually going to do it. So x plus 15, I'm going to put minus 15 under my plus 15. But what I do to one side of my equation, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to put minus 15 underneath my 24. And so then I have 24 minus 15, and that's just 9. So x equals 9. So now that we've done the first 3 steps, we got to do step 4. You got to make that case. You're like a detective. A detective has to make a case. They have to put together what they got. So let's plug in 9 to check it. So x plus 15 equals 24. I'm going to plug in 9. So 9 plus 15. And you're going to find out that I get 24 out of that. Example 2 here. Alright, so let's go to the world of subtraction now. So x minus 16 equals 11. Alright, so step 1, isolate that x. Get it alone. Step 2, identify your clues. I'm subtracting 16. I'm going to write that down, because this is going to help me in step 3 undo the clues, which is the opposite. So the opposite of subtraction is addition. I'm going to add 16. So then I'm actually going to do that. So x minus 16 equals 11. I'm going to add 16 to both sides. And I see that x equals 27. And so step 4, let's make our case, detective. Let's plug that in. So 27 minus 16, I get 11. So I'm good to go. So addition is the opposite of subtraction, and subtraction is the opposite of addition. You've got to remember that, okay? This is big for equations. All right, so I'm going to go I'm going to change colors again. Ooh. Real quick, before we get to multiplying and dividing. Let's go. All right, now I got that change. let's go back to solving these and let's look at the world of multiplying and dividing. So that our next example, let's say we have 4x equals 16. Step 1, we isolate the variable. Step 2, let's identify our clues. We are multiplying by 4. When it's written like this with a number next to x without anything between them, there's a multiplication symbol right there, you just can't see it. So we're multiplying by 4 here. So then step 3, when we undo the clues, we figure out that to undo multiplying, we divide. We are going to divide by 4. So let's do that. So I have 4x equals 16. Divide both sides by 4. My 4 with the 4x, when I divide it by 4, they cancel each other. Bye-bye. So then I'm left with x equals 16 divided by 4 is, of course, 4. So now let's check it. Step 4. Let's put together our case. 4x equals 16. I plug in 4, and I see that 4 times 4 is 16. So I'm good to go on that one. All right, so remember, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So let's look at an example with dividing. So x over 6 equals 7. All right, so step 1, we isolate the x. Step 2, what are my clues? When it's written like this in fraction form, we're dividing by that number on bottom. So I'm dividing by 6. So that helps me in step 3, undo the clues. That helps me realize that the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So to undo that, I'm going to multiply by 6. And so let's do it. X over 6 equals 7. Multiply both sides by 6. Well, the 6 is over there with the x. They cancel each other. And so I'm just left with x on that side. And then 7 times 6 is 42. Step 4, gotta check it. So let's plug that in. So 42 over 6 is, of course, 7. So 7 equals 7. So what you see here is that the opposite of multiplying is dividing, and the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So equations are not that tough if you follow the steps. Remember, isolate your variable, identify your clues or your operations. Step 3, undo those, do the opposite. And in step 4, make your case by checking it. I know you guys can solve all these mysteries. Equations are so much fun. Once you get it, it's like a pattern. And just identify those clues and you won't have any trouble with it. I know you guys can do this 10 at a time. Oh.